It takes skill to develop a video game and also requires a team of designers, artists, programmers, and testers. Though video games are much popular in the entertainment industry, unfortunately, some video games don't sell well upon release like most games created by famous gaming companies. As great as video games can be, they can also be terrible due to bad graphics, glitches, hard controls, etc. Recently, I decided to do a video on video games known for negative reception after reading a list on Wikipedia. And so, here are the 10 worst-selling video games of all time. Disclaimer: I don't mean any disrespect to any game developer or publisher that has worked on these games. This video shows why these games turned out to be failures after their releases. So let's get to it. Number 10. Trespasser, released in 1998 for Microsoft Windows, made by American developer Danger Close Games. It may seem interesting just because it comes from the Jurassic Park series, but don't be fooled. This game will ruin your life and make you rage quit. Created by defunct Danger Close Games while under its original name, DreamWorks Interactive, it follows after the second Jurassic Park film. The game received lots of negative reviews and GameSpot declared it as the worst game of 1998. The game has sold about 50,000 copies and was a commercial failure. Many reviewers complained that the exploration was exhausting due to slow move speed, barren landscapes with some dinosaurs, glitches, and bad voice acting. When you start the game, you begin on the shores of an island, but you don't start with any weapons, so you need to go find one. The controls are broken, like having to move On's arm around while trying to solve puzzles and shoot enemies. If that wasn't bad enough, the game contains 0 maps, which makes it difficult to know where you are and need to go. Sometimes you may get surrounded by carnivorous dinosaurs. It's much like being caught in an ambush by a pack of velociraptors, and when you keep dying or get stuck not knowing where to go, you'll end up smashing your keyboard around never wanting to play this game again. Number 9. Sonic Boom, Rise of Lyric and Shattered Crystal, released in 2014 on the Wii U and the Nintendo 3DS, made by American developers Big Red Button and Sanzaru Games. This time, we are moving on to 2 Sonic games not developed but published by Sega. Despite being spin-offs of the Sonic series, these 2 games did not sell well at all. Rise of Lyric on the Wii U met a negative response because of its many issues. The camera system doesn't seem to go well, and the combat style is much like something from a beat-em-up game. Sega stated that the sales for both games had shifted to 620,000 copies since March 31st, 2015, making them the lowest-selling games in the franchise. Both games contain 4 playable characters, but with one difference. Amy is playable in the Wii U version, but not in the 3DS version, where she is replaced by sticks. Each character has a weapon called the Enerby, where you can hang from rails, attack enemies, and solve puzzles. Shattered Crystal on the 3DS is often in 2D, but the Worm Tunnel levels are 3D. Styx' boomerang is hard to control when thrown. Personally, I enjoyed these games when I played them, so I don't care if they were poorly sold. Say what you want about how better Sonic Boom Fire and Ice is, since it is an improvement over Rise of Lyric and Shattered Crystal. Even I played that game. Sonic Boom also had its own TV series, but let's not talk about that. Continuing on. Number 8. The 3 Legend of Zelda games released from 1993 to 1994 on the Philips CDI, made by Russian-American developer Animation Magic and American developer Veritas Corporation. The Legend of Zelda is a series of action-adventure games created by Nintendo. In 1989, Nintendo gave Dutch corporation Philips the license to use some Zelda characters, Link, Zelda, and Ganon, for the 3 games on the CDI. The Philips CDI was one of the gaming systems that turned out to be commercial failures in history. Link, The Faces of Evil, and Zelda, The Wand of Gamelon were both released in 1993 by defunct Animation Magic. The animated cutscenes are like something straight out of a Russian animated film.
Gee, it sure is boring around here.
My boy, this peace is what all true warriors strive for.
I just wonder what Ganon's up to.
Your Majesty, Ganon and his minions have seized the island of Korodai.
How can we help?
It is written, only Link can defeat Ganon.
The voice acting sounds weird, and the gameplay doesn't seem that easy. Zelda's Adventure, released in 1994 by Veritas Corporation, uses different gameplay, and its cutscenes are live action instead of anime. Danny Cohen of OneUp.com called the game unplayable due to the frame rate, bad controls, and load times, and gives a warning saying, quote, "Collector desire means nothing as far as good gameplay is concerned. However, avoid this game at all costs." Many fans of the Zelda series may despise these games, so if you are looking to play a better Zelda game, stick with the ones made by Nintendo. Number 7. Spyro Enter the Dragonfly, released in 2002 on the PlayStation 2 and Nintendo GameCube, made by American developers Check 6 Studios and Equinox Digital Entertainment. If you ever wanted to catch dragonflies, chances are you'll enjoy this game. Developed by 2 American developers and published by Universal Interactive, this is the 4th main game in the Spyro series. While it sold well, it had lots of issues such as bad controls, a terrible frame rate, bugs and glitches, etc. According to Ted Price, the president of Insomniac Games, which originally owned Spyro, he spoke about how bad the game is in an interview, saying, quote, "Spyro has become an abused stepchild. Spyro Enter the Dragonfly on PS2 and GameCube was an absolute travesty. When the game was in development, the amount of dragonflies to collect was originally planned to be 120 and over 25 levels. Unfortunately, Universal forced the developers to skyrocket to have the game ready for winter 2002, so there are 90 dragonflies and 9 levels instead. In order to catch a dragonfly, it will try and fly away from you, so you'll need to use Spyro's bubble breath to trap it. The game only contains one boss, which is only in the last level. Another issue why this game failed is that an accident occurred where a young player who played the game suffered from epileptic seizures. The boy's parents sued Universal, Check 6, Equinox, and Sony in 2007 because of this. The New York State Supreme Court stated that the developers didn't design Spyro well and the game was deemed dangerous, and they failed to warn players of the danger because of certain light patterns and flashing lights. It is also stated that players should stop playing this game if they start having epilepsy symptoms and see a physician and before continuing the game. All I can say is that if you are planning to play a video game that contains a lot of flashing lights and lights that are too bright for your eyes, please don't play that game too long like this one. Number 6. Aliens Colonial Marines, released in 2013 for Windows, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360, made by American developer Gearbox Software. Alien has to be the most horrifying science fiction franchise in history. It became so popular that comic books and video games based on the franchise were made throughout the year. There has also been a crossover series titled Alien vs. Predator, which combines the franchise and another franchise titled Predator. However, one Alien game in particular has the words "Don't play this game" written all over it, and that is Aliens Colonial Marines. This game was developed over 6 years by Gearbox because the developer was focusing on other projects such as Duke Nukem Forever and Borderlands 2. The game serves as a sequel to James Cameron's Aliens, the second film in the series. The game had sold over 1 million copies, but received a large amount of negative reviews due to its technical problems, low-quality graphics, and weak enemy AI. In April 2013, 2 months after the game's release, 2 Two players named Roger Damien Perrine and John Locke filed a lawsuit against Gearbox and Sega, claiming that the two companies had falsely advertised the game by showing demos at trade shows like PAX and E3 and didn't seem accurate upon the final product. Sega settled the lawsuit and agreed to pay $1.25 million, but Gearbox was against this because they did not have the right to make marketing decisions. The game also contains downloadable content. For example, Movie Map Pack. It has 4 maps based on the first 3 Alien films. By all honesty, you're better off playing the Alien vs. Predator games and Alien Isolation. Number 5. Hotel Mario, released in 1994 on the Philips CDI, made by American developer Philips Fantasy Factory. Yet another Nintendo licensed game for Philips CDI is on this list. Not only did Nintendo give Philips the rights to use Zelda characters, they also gave them the rights to use Mario characters. Philips planned to have several Mario games on the Philips CDI, but only one was made, and that is Hotel Mario. This is a puzzle game, and the goal in each level is to close all doors. However, enemies will attempt to open the doors back up. Even the bosses, such as the Koopalings, can do that. Entering an elevator takes you to another floor, but it's difficult where it will take you if you are not reading the arrows on each elevator. Like the Super Mario series, there are power-ups like the Fire Flower, which allows you to throw fireballs, and you can stomp on certain enemies. The game received mixed reviews, but drew in criticism for its door-closing mechanic, bad controls, bad voice acting, and cutscenes. Just like the two Philips CDI Zelda games, the game also features animated cutscenes created from a Russian studio. The game was a failure that Eurogamer said that it was much terrible than one game called Elevator Action. IGN considered that the cutscenes were compared to Microsoft Paint. There is also one Mario game that Philips had planned called Super Mario's Wacky Worlds, but never got a chance to release. And so, Hotel Mario is the only Mario game on the Philips CDI. This is one Mario game you would rather not play, so stick with the Mario games Nintendo made. Number 4. Universal Studios Theme Parks Adventure, released in 2001 for Nintendo GameCube, made by Japanese developer Nai Digital Works. No, this wasn't set in either Universal Studios Hollywood or Universal Studios Florida, but instead, it is set in Universal Studios Japan. First released in Japan in December, 9 months after Universal Studios Japan opened, this is a party game, and the goal is to complete several mini-games based on the attractions. The Universal attractions included in the game are Jurassic Park, Jaws, Back to the Future, E.T., Backdraft, Waterworld, and Wild 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 West Stunt Show. You can also take a movie quiz where you must answer several questions about the Universal films featured in the game. The game was poorly received due to its bad gameplay and minigames, and players may argue that they would compare it to a Nintendo 64 game. It was said to be the worst video game by NGC Magazine UK until it was surpassed by Batman Dark Tomorrow. To my knowledge, when the developer put in player characters based on children, they certainly got it mixed up. Since the game is T-rated and most of the attractions based on Universal films that are not suited for younger children, they should have made the player characters based on adults instead. Also, when they named this game Universal Studios Theme Parks Adventure, they got it confusing for American players. Since it is set in Universal Studios Japan, they should have called it Universal Studios Japan Adventure. These attractions, Back to the Future, E.T. Adventure, and Wild West Stunt Show are currently no longer operating at Universal Studios Japan as of today. Once you collect all of the stamps and see the night show, the game will end. Number 3. PacMan, released in 1982 on the Atari 2600, made by American developer Atari. Ever wanted to play the classic PacMan game on a different arcade port? Well, forget it. Don't play this one. This port was made by the developer that started the modern video game industry, Atari. PacMan was first created by Namco in 1980 with the first game on a regular arcade. The goal in each level is to pick up all of the pellets while avoiding the ghosts. Picking up a power pellet causes the ghosts to turn blue, making them run away from you. When PacMan eats a blue ghost, you get bonus points. Throughout the years, PacMan has become the longest-running, best-selling, and highest-grossing franchise in video game history. When the Atari 2600 port of the classic game was in development, it took 6 months to complete, and Atari would hold a national PacMan Day to promote its release. After its release, it became the best-selling Atari 2600 game of all time. Unfortunately, critics despised it because of its bad visuals and sound, and for being like a copy of the original game. It was then marketed as one of the worst arcade ports ever made, which led to the video game crash of 1993. Another Atari 2600 game that led to the crash is a game adaptation of E.T. the Extraterrestrial. On July 1st, 1984, 1 year after the crash started, the original Atari would close and its assets split as a direct result. In 2014, a video game burial of game cartridges created by the original Atari were excavated in Alamogordo, New Mexico. These cartridges were thought to be copies never sold, and the Atari 2600 port of PacMan is one of them. So, if you are looking to play a PacMan game, the ones made by Namco, such as the classic game, are your best. Number 2, Umbrella Corps, released in 2016 for Microsoft Windows and PlayStation 4, made by Japanese developer Capcom. I know what you're thinking. Capcom made games like Street Fighter and Mega Man. How could they have made a bad one? Well, according to the reviewers and critics, they did. And it's the one and only Umbrella Corps. This is a spin-off of the Resident Evil series. Perhaps Dante has something to say about this game's failure. This is not your kind of survival horror like most games in the series. Its reception was incredibly negative, and critics compared it to a Call of Duty game and a previous Resident Evil game called Operation Raccoon City. The way you move the character makes you feel much like an ice skater. A single-player campaign is called The Experiment, where you go out on missions, but as you progress through the game, the superiors will try to kill you by sending you on more dangerous missions, making further levels harder. As you complete all of the levels in single-player mode, you are deemed as the Grim Reaper. By far, this was deemed as the worst game in the Resident Evil series, and the gameplay is quite clumsy. There is even a multiplayer campaign, but its story is different, and don't try to play this game. So all I can say is that this might be the game many Resident Evil fans want to forget about. Before we get to number 1, I like to show 3 games that are not known for negative reception but are considered bad. First up is Rollercoaster Tycoon World, released in 2016. Upon its pre-release, the game received a large load of negative reviews by critics and fans stating that it was worse than Rollercoaster Tycoon 3. When I first played this game, I had a lot of lag issues, so I had no choice but to stick with Planet Coaster. Eurogamer made a suggestion to stay away from the game, so you are better off playing Planet Coaster. Up next is Sonic Spinball, released in 1993. As the name implies, this is a pinball game, but not like any other. It may be fun to play, but the controls are hard. You could say that this is the hardest Sonic game to beat. Nintendo Life has said that the game was not a good platformer and good pinball game due to its terrible ball physics and frustrating platform effects. So if you are new to this game on either the Sega Genesis or the Game Gear, you are going to have a hard time with the controls. Finally is Fire Emblem Thracia 776, released in 1999 through Nintendo Power and 2000 for the Super Famicom. This was the last Fire Emblem game created by Shozo Kaga, the series' original designer, before he left Nintendo. You would say this is the hardest game to beat in the series. After its release, it was the best-selling Super Famicom game of September in 1999. However, in 2002, it became the worst-selling game in the series at the time. It's a Japan exclusive, what do you expect? And now, the winner of this poll is Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, developed by Sonic Team and published by Sega. You can think that this is the worst Sonic game in the series, but I enjoyed this game. The issues in the game were the long load times, camera system, story stability, and broken controls. The game consists of 3 episodes, so with a 4th and last that can be unlocked after completing all 3 episodes. In the Sonic episode, some levels contain endless running sections in which you can't stop but have to tilt left or right and jump over obstacles. You also can't attack enemies because of this. Running into an obstacle during a running section makes this game feel much like a car accident than just running. In the Shadow episode, Shadow can perform combo attacks after connecting with an enemy with a homing attack. He can also drive in vehicles such as motorcycles, for example. In the Silver episode, Silver cannot run fast like Sonic or Shadow. Instead, the goal in each level is to use his telekinesis to reach certain areas, attack enemies, and solve puzzles. Despite the game receiving a negative reception, Game Informer and Play Magazine protected it, suggesting that Game Informer praised the graphics and even the story in which Sonic fans would enjoy it. In 2010, Sega made the decision to remove the game from retailers which had a below-average Metacritic score. Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 was a failure and an embarrassment, which led to rethinking the series' direction. To my thoughts when I played this game, I don't find this to be terrible among other Sonic games. I don't care if it was a critical failure.